Thank you. With your indulgence, I'm going to sit today because I'm feeling a little queasy this morning. And I don't want to stand up there and fall over the edge or something like that. I'm a philosopher. And as a result, the bad news for that is that I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. Philosophers don't use pictures. So it's more in the tradition of philosophy to just read a paper. But I'm going to kind of break the philosophy rules this morning because I am so excited about so many of the ideas that are floating around and some of the reports like this one about work that are people doing. I want to allow myself a little time to do some comments, which is forbidden in formal philosophy usually. I'm good at breaking rules, so I don't know why I'm surprised, but I sort of was surprised that so many of the presentations had to do with corporate life and worker concerns and health and well-being and happiness in a corporate structure. And I instead am going to talk about something completely different. In the corporate structure, of course, you have the shareholders or the investors who are the owners of the corporation. You have a board of directors who are chosen by the owners. You have the management, which is chosen by the board of directors, and then you have the workers way down here or way down there, maybe, depending on the corporation. What I'm going to be talking about is worker-owned businesses, okay? In that structure, the owners are workers, and the management are workers, and the workers are owners. So the whole structure of corporate structure just collapses kind of into a situation in which the concerns about issues between owners and workers disappear. They just go away. They don't have to be even considered. So I'm going to start out real quick by doing a little survey here. It's more for my information than anything, but it should be interesting. How many of you either do now or have in the past worked in the private sector? How many have you worked in the private sector? Okay, keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Of all of those who have worked in the private sector, keep your hands up if you were an employee, a worker. The rest put your hands down. Okay, that got rid of a bunch of people. Of all of you who have been workers, how many were really, really happy as a worker? The rest put your hands down. How many we got? Okay, I want you to meet with me afterwards, and I'm going to hire you for my new business, okay? Okay, so you kind of get the drift here? My presentation this morning is really an open letter to the Bhutan government. And I'm saying to the Bhutan government that in addition, not in place of, but in addition to the consideration of workers' well-being and happiness, think about the promotion of worker-owned businesses as an alternative to dealing with or eliminating the problems of conflict, let's say, or tension between owners and workers in businesses. I'm now going to do my philosophy thing and read a shortened version of the paper that I was going to present for 20 minutes. I will hit all the salient points without all of the very careful argumentation that's required of philosophers, you know. Worker-owned businesses, I feel, are a natural fit for the gross national happiness philosophy. This discussion of an approach to business organization that is compatible with the philosophy of gross national happiness will take place within an historical context in two regards. First is the history and scope of business organizations per se. The second is my personal history of involvement in such businesses. The primary tool of this discussion will be the logical analysis of various organizational models, strongly supported by what I call Paul's Law, or the Penner Principle, which means everything has pros and cons. A lot of time when we discuss issues and get emotionally involved in one side of a debate, we forget about the value of the other side of the debate. So my basic principle says you have to pay really good attention to both sides of issues about a certain debate that's taking place or investigation. All businesses use labor in some form. Some early business models have had the distinct advantage of very inexpensive labor. These include slavery, serfdom, and sharecropping. These are hardly in keeping with the G&H philosophy, of course. It is true as well that capitalism and socialism also have serious deficits in relation to G&H. The goal of a business in the capitalist system is to generate a profit. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but this is a euphemism for the accumulation of the control of wealth. That's what generating a profit is. I'll say that again. The accumulation of the control of wealth. When a business accumulates wealth, others, including workers, become potentially less wealthy. And the end result is massive income inequality. Again, we know this. The goal of a socialist economy is to share wealth. But people can be variously selfless and selfish regarding the relationships in their lives. When the selfish mode predominates in some persons in a socialist economy, graft, corruption, and authoritarianism emerge. Wealth is accumulated inappropriately, and the system fails for essentially the same reason as capitalism. And we've seen this happen over and over again. A middle path out of this morass is a system that promotes worker-owned businesses. In this case, the accumulation of wealth as a result of doing business adheres to all workers in the business because they are also the owners. Worker-owned businesses exemplify the positive characteristics of both major economic systems. The motivation of competition among businesses of like kind, as in capitalism, and the efficiency and sharing of wealth and income within businesses, as in socialism. Now, any business can be worker-owned. Indeed, all businesses could be worker-owned. A successful worker-owned business requires a firm foundation, a structure that is appropriate for the particular type of business in which the worker owners are engaged. The simplest such business is a sole proprietorship. An example might be a carpenter who works alone to accomplish skilled tasks for other people. Depending on the skill, integrity, and salesmanship of the carpenter, a decent living wage can potentially be generated. which means the basic needs of that individual and or family, with perhaps some left over, which counts as wealth accumulation. Another rather simple structure is a small family farm, of which there are many in Bhutan. Typically, on a small family farm all over the world, all or most of the family members work to create the products needed for subsistence and for sale for cash flow, with perhaps some left over, which counts as wealth accumulation. This latter is one example of many that takes the step from sole proprietorship to a multi-worker business. Another example is a cooperative. In this case, 2 or more people informally combine their individual physical resources, such as tools, skills, and labor, to produce products or services for a larger array of customers in a more efficient way by means of specialization. I was at one time part of a 4-person construction cooperative. We all solicited work from various customers and shared the work. We all received the same hourly pay with the particular rate of each job dependent upon the overall profit for each job. This generated a good income for each of the 4 of us, with some left over, which counts as wealth accumulation. Another type of cooperative is one of joining worker-owned businesses together to promote everyone jointly. I live in an area of intense dairy farming. For each farm family to market the milk or milk products directly to customers is time-consuming and costly. So our farm families create cooperatives and collectively market their products. The raw milk from each farm is taken to a central location where it is processed, marketed, and sold under one brand name. Another multi-worker structure is a partnership. While similar to a cooperative, a partnership arrangement is usually more legally formal. I once met a person in my village who had started a local online bulletin board. This was back in the mid-1990s. I had become a member of the bulletin board and discovered that we shared a dream of providing internet access to our village, which had none at the time. He had already invested a considerable amount of money in his system, and so agreed to match his investment, and so I agreed to match his investment and his labor to create an equal formal partnership. My partner did all the technological work while I handled the marketing and the finances. Thus, by combining our resources, we were able to introduce internet service to our village and earn a decent living for ourselves and our respective families, with some left over, which counts as wealth accumulation. Of course, partnerships can have employees, such as law firms do, but that is not carved in stone. Nothing legal or ethically stops a partnership from accepting new partners in the business rather than hiring non-partner workers. Which road is taken in a successful business partnership is entirely up to the philosophy of the existing partners. Finally, corporations are very amenable to the worker-owned approach. After all, a corporation is already an entity with multiple stock owners. All that needs to be done to turn it into a worker-owned business is to structure a corporation such that only workers buy or are awarded stock. This idea, however, tends to lead to multiple criticisms. First, the argument goes, not everyone has the inherent ability to do all jobs in a corporation. Not everyone, it is said, can be a CEO of a large corporation. But whether or not this claim is true, it is irrelevant to worker-owned corporate structure. The criticism rests on the false idea that the term worker refers to some lower-level non-executive labor, that it does not apply to executive-level labor, that somehow building maintenance, for example, is inherently less valuable to the success of a business than accounting. Surely the GNF philosophy rejects this claim, even if not overtly, and rightly so. Second, another argument goes, executive-level management jobs require much more education and training than skilled or unskilled jobs. Now, there is some truth to this point, but it's not the one outlined above about inherent differences in abilities justifying lower pay. Rather, the salient point is that education and training cost money and time to obtain the skills that the executive worker brings on board for the benefit of the owners. In this case, all the workers at all levels. This disparity in time and funds spent can be dealt with equitably in several ways, however. A local worker-owned corporation with which I am familiar always preferentially promotes existing workers to higher levels of responsibility rather than bringing in persons from the outside the business to fill job vacancies.
Two minutes, Paul.
Okay. The company, then just to briefly summarize, the company provides the funding for education and training for their workers and always promotes from within. A problem with producing worker-owned companies and supporting them is finances. And I've seen this referred to in the case of many of the reports here that are given here. And so my suggestion along the lines of finances for worker-owned companies is credit unions, on one hand, credit unions and financial cooperatives, which are in themselves analogous to worker-owned companies. They're member-owned organizations of financial services. And then this is where the government comes in with providing funds for grants and for low-interest loans with long payback periods as a matter of official policy to promote worker-owned businesses. So I'm going to finish with some homework for you, a take-home quiz this is for you. In the proposed G&H business, I have it here someplace, there's a sentence, here it is. Here's the sentence. Under worker happiness is aimed at instilling a duty of care for workers' welfare. That is obviously true in a business organization in which the owners and the workers are different people. So what your homework is to look at that very same sentence from the perspective of worker-owned businesses and decide whether it's true or false for worker-owned businesses. And you can come to me anytime today and give me your answer, and if you're right, I'll give you a gold star. And you can put it on your forehead or your nose or whatever you want to do, you know. So I will leave you with that assignment, and I hope you will take it seriously.